Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Harrah's Hoosier Park. And we have a bit of a different look to our handicapping studio today, as we are looking at the Dan Patch studio from the other way around. Michael Chamberlain, Rick Moore, Emily Gaskin, and Jacob Reinheimer all here as we're going to talk about the 149th renewal of the Kentucky Derby. A field of 20 going postward on Saturday, May 6th. And first of all, let's introduce all of our different credentials, because we're all the handicappers here at Harrah's Hoosier Park, and we've got a pretty good track record, I think.
Yeah, I'm just a race fan this time of year, and I'm Rick Moore, Vice President, General Manager of horse racing here at Harrah's Hoosier Park. But I can't wait till this weekend. I studied the Derby hard in preparation for this roundtable. I've looked at the Oaks card. I've looked at the Derby card. I cannot wait till this weekend. It's one unbelievable race after another. I started to look I knew Rich Strike was running in the Ali Sheba, so I started looking at like the 10th or 11th race on Oaks Day. He's in the 5th race.
Yeah.
He's in the 5th race, $500,000 in the 5th race.
That's just not even what kind of card we've got.
It's
going
unbelievable.
It's not even on the tip sheet. I didn't even go back that far.
Didn't
I
make
didn't
the
have
tip
room.
sheet.
No, I was doing the same thing, handicapping. What a not only an incredible card, but just an incredible derby. It's a deep derby, as deep a field as I can remember.
I agree. Jacob, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been following the road to the Derby here at Hoosier Park all season long, upset after upset. It's been a pretty wide open affair coming into this. We've got a few that maybe stand out, but nobody's quite sure where to go. So I think there are a lot of different directions you can go in this Derby, and I think we've all gone some different directions here.
Yeah, and interesting you mentioned the upsets, because things kind of leveled out a little bit toward the latter prep races, because Forte won the Florida Derby, Tapatrice won the Bluegrass, and you saw a little more of an evening out of those long shot prices. The horse you expected to come to the fore actually started to do that the closer we've been getting to this date.
This Derby, unlike many others, like last year, I mean, Emily will tell you, I was Epicenter for 2 months out. You couldn't have talked me off Epicenter no matter what. I mean, he was my horse. I thought he was going to win the Derby until about the last 200 yards, right? This year, I got it down to 7 horses. And I tell you, I can't split those 7 horses.
Yeah, I'm with you there. One thing that I think, I do think that we can all agree on is that hopefully this year, this Derby will be pretty straightforward, or let's hope anyways, right? I was going back and looking at it, right? So last year we had Rich Strike, 80-1. The previous year was the disqualification.
Right, Medina Spirit getting disqualified, yes.
And Mandolin. And then the previous year was Country House.
The previous year was, don't forget, Authentic was in there, too,
yeah, okay,
with the COVID year. And that was in September.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's right.
September.
Which actually was on my wedding anniversary, believe it or not.
Then we had the maximum security, the Country House.
The disqualification,
Correct. Yeah.
And oddly enough, Country House was the second biggest long shot to win the Derby until last year.
Yeah.
Because he was 63-1. And the thing about that was, I remember that Derby. There were so many people talking Country House that week because they liked his race in Arkansas, and I was surprised he was that price.
Speaking of that, I don't know how you all feel. I really feel like over the last, maybe it's more than 10 years, the Arkansas Derby has become maybe the premier prep race for the Kentucky Derby.
Sure.
It used to be Florida Derby and Bluegrass, right?
Right.
But the Arkansas Derby is really, I guess with that $1 million purse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really become, in the races leading up to the Arkansas Derby.
Exactly, yeah.
And the horse that won the Arkansas Derby, Angel of Empire, is one of the favorites going into this race.
Well, and I find it interesting. We can talk about this more as we dive into our picks, but the lead up to this Derby, we do have a 3-1 kind of prohibitive favorite on the morning line anyway, being Forte, but I find it really interesting the way we talk about him within the industry as everyone looks to beat the favorite in a 20-horse field, as, anything can happen. But Forte is 3-1 on the morning line, currently favorite. And he really hasn't done anything wrong to kick his 3-year-old year off. So
I agree.
And here he comes.
I think he's not getting the credit due him. I think people watched the Florida Derby and thought it was kind of a ho-hum win. I thought it was an impressive win. Michael, you and I have talked about it. Winning from the 11 hole at that mile and 1/8 distance at Gulfstream Park is very, very difficult. And for him to run down Mage in the last few yards, I thought was impressive. So
the thing that was impressive about it was the fact that Mage passed him.
Correct.
And then he re-rallied to come back and win that race. And when you said, we've talked about this, I was not as impressed as you were with that performance, but that was certainly something that you need to take note of. The fact that the horse managed to re-rally, because normally when a horse gets passed, he gets passed, and that's it.
I guess, and back to Jacob's point, what do you think I don't want to say holdup is on Forte? Just because, I mean, and for me personally, when you think of a Derby favorite, you think of Classic Empire, you think of, these big horses, and I don't mean physically big, I mean, that come in with kind
stature, reputation.
Yes, reputation that kind of surrounds him, and he just doesn't have that, and I don't know what the holdup is, but I mean, I feel the same. He just hasn't done anything that has been super visually impressive for me. He doesn't give off Derby winner vibes to me, and I don't know what it is, and so that's why I asked the question. I mean, what do you think it is about Forte?
And the thing about that too is, it's not like he didn't win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile
right.
last year, because he did that.
I was going to say, and it's not like he wasn't the 2-year-old of the year as well. So he's got the resume, he's got everything, and I'm sitting here asking the question to myself, because as I was handicapping, I did quite a few times go back to him, but when I think, of a Derby winner, like you said, Classic, these horses that you couldn't talk yourself off of, and he's just not that horse for me. So I went elsewhere. But I don't know, like I said, I don't know what else you could want from Forte coming into this race.
I agree. He's done what he's supposed to do. He's 2 for 2 this year. He won the Fountain of Youth. He won the Florida Derby.
And I saw Todd Pletcher, an interview with Todd Pletcher. I think Rosanna Pravnik was talking to him on Twin Spires, and he said, that's just the horse's kind of MO. He's not an overachiever. He does what he has to do. He doesn't get rattled. He eats well. He sleeps well. He does everything well. He's just one of those horses that's, not going to go out and do more than that's asked of him. And, maybe he's a lot smarter than the rest of us are giving him credit.
Speaking of Todd Pletcher, can we all agree on one thing? Todd Pletcher is loaded for bear in this Derby.
Yes,
and
my
Oaks, he's got 2.
I know.
Going into the Oaks
what a weekend it could be for Todd Pletcher.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. That's a name that you definitely are going to hear quite a bit of over the course of the Oaks Friday and Derby Saturday as we continue on here. I have to say, though, I also think that, Brad Cox has been a guy that's really been coming to the fore during the prep season as well. And, you're just not hearing anything about him this week.
No, but he's, Brad Cox has become one of the trainers here in North America, and he's got one heck of a stable, and you can never sell him short.
No, and he's got, Jace's Road, who we all expect to be the pace setter here, but he also has Angel of Empire in this race, which we've already discussed.
And Angel of Empire does seem to be kind of the it horse coming into it. 2 really impressive starts in the prep races coming in, and I know he's 8-1 on the morning line, but I know we've talked prior to this. It wouldn't shock us if he goes off maybe the favorite during post time. I don't think you're going to get that 8-1 price that's on the morning line, because Angel of Empire is kind of the it horse coming in. I
agree with you. He is the buzz horse.
Yeah.
As we talked the other night, the wise guy horse.
Right.
I bet on him in the Arkansas Derby. Got 9-2 on him. I don't think you'll get 9-2 on him here in the Derby. Maybe you will, but he is coming into it, couldn't come, in better fashion. So he was my top choice. I know we're not getting into our choices yet. He was my top choice until this morning when that's how I couldn't.
Last second change always gets you.
I was doing it. Yeah.
Well, let's discuss that really here. What do we think the favorite's going to go off in? Do we think it's going to be Forte?
I think it will be Forte.
I do, yeah. I agree.
What do you think? 3-1, 7-2?
I was going to say 7-2. That's my first gut, but I mean,
I was thinking he might float up as high as 4-1, really.
Could be.
Given that we think Angel of Empire is going to come down, and we haven't really talked about Tapatrice yet, and he's the second choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are coming off a year with Rich Strike. We're coming off one of the biggest upsets ever. I do think the prices on the favorites are going to be a little bit more favorable this year. Coming off a year with massive upset, you always see that. I think some of those price horses are probably going to be worse odds than they should be, because nobody wants the Rich Strike situation.
Yeah, we walk kind of right into that circle, too. You talk about Forte. I think a lot of people were off Forte because they didn't think they were going to get the price or the value that that maybe he needed or that you wanted. And like you said, Angel of Empire has taken a lot of buzz. And then, as Jacob said, a lot of these long shots, we're calling them live long shots. So you're actually getting a better price on Forte than I think, anybody could count on.
And no one's talking about King's Barnes. No one said a word about him. 3 for 3, has drawn off, won the Louisiana Derby by himself in hand.
If nothing else, I'm just interested to see how the horse races. I mean, this could set up for serious discussion. Unraced at 2 and comes into this and 3 for 3, and I don't think anybody can discount the talent that this colt has, obviously, and that he's displayed. It's
Uncle
just
Mo.
a matter of here you are on the biggest stage in your 4th start of your life. Let's see how it goes.
Todd Pletcher.
The couple of knocks against him, though, is if you remember last year, Taba only had 3 starts coming coming
That's
in,
right.
and he had dominated that Santa Anita Derby
Right.
and was really very high on that. And I think that may be playing a little bit against Kings Barnes here with just having the 3 starts. But the difference here, and I've said this the last few years since they made the switch, the Louisiana Derby is now 1 mile and 3/16, which is the same distance as the Preakness, which is 2 weeks after this Saturday. I think that these horses coming from Louisiana have been doing much better when it comes to Derby Day because of that extra prep race, that extra distance in the prep race.
And the stretch at Fairgrounds is that long
reminiscent of Churchill,
stretch.
yes.
So it
right.
kind of is the same type of setup as Churchill Downs.
So as we take a look at the field of 20, let's go ahead and take a look at the 20 horses that are in the race. We did mention that Forte is the 3-1 favorite on the morning line. Tapatrice is the second choice at 5-1, and then 8-1 on Angel of Empire. As you take a look at the board here, does anyone on this board really stand out as a big live long shot that we like?
Guys, Jacob, Emily?
There's a couple that I like that, I think that you've got to, and that's what's always interesting too about, betting the Derby is that we can sit here and I think obviously as it comes closer, you're going to have to just play the board a little bit. So there's a few horses that stand out to me. I like Confidence Game a little bit at 20-1. I think this is a horse that could fly under the radar a little bit, and I like the way that he's coming into this. I think as we've talked about, Michael, 2 fills is going to take a lot of money. So he's 12-1 right now, but I think kind of like you said, he's the wise guy horse, right? The connections,
so.
seeking their first Derby,
Yes.
coming from Hawthorne. He's got a lot of local love and the like. So I don't think he's necessarily, I like the horse, but I don't think he's going to be as long of a price as you would want to jump in.
Another horse I've heard some people, and actually I went to Keeneland a couple weeks ago, and the one name, I was talking to Kurt Becker about this, the one name he mentioned to me was Skinner.
Okay.
Who is up there at 20-1 on the board right now, and was a winner on February 12th at Santa Anita, and then had back-to-back third place finishes in the 2 prep races there, which is what got him into this position. Now, 20-1 on the board there, and I've seen on Twitter some folks are really behind this horse quite a bit. We'll have to see how it plays out, obviously, Saturday, but I think that might be a horse that I don't know if you're going to get that 20-1.
That's interesting. You mentioned Skinner in the Santa Anita Derby. You got to take a stand somehow. When you get your picks together and you decide what you're going to do as far as betting's concerned. I always loved the California horses. I always liked the California horses. I threw everyone out from the Santa Anita Derby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I threw everyone out from the Wood Memorial.
Really?
I mean, that's just I had to, and I got it down to 7 horses. And you talk about a couple of long shots I did include. Verifying is what I think is an interesting horse. That race 2 races ago at Oaklawn in the Rebel, I would throw that race out. I remember watching that race. It was a very sloppy track, and I think 6 or 7 jockeys had the same idea. They're going to go for the lead in that sloppy track, and they went quarter horsing out of the gate, and Verifying was one of them, and they set it up for the closer. So I would throw that race out.
Price, yeah.
So I would throw that race out, and then he comes back and gets beat by Tapatrice. So at 15-1, I think he's an interesting one.
And when he got beat by Tapatrice, I mean, he dug in.
Yes, he did.
Really showed some grit and determination there.
He did.
I was very impressed with that performance because I thought, okay, Tapatrice obviously is going to track him down. Not obviously, it's going to track him down, and he could have packed it in, but I thought he held very tough with that.
Did.
You were going to say something about
and then going back to the horse who beat him in the Rebel, you mentioned him, Confidence Game. We could be looking at a little bit of a wet track come Saturday at Churchill. It's kind of 50-50 right now. It could go either way.
When the picks come up, I'm going to make that point because I've got Confidence Game in there for that very reason.
Confidence Game could not have looked any better in the slop at Oaklawn in that Rebel Stakes. We haven't seen him since that Rebel, which is a little bit of a concern. But with that said, we get a sloppy track on Saturday. That could
the
be
odd
key.
thing, again, referencing some of the picks on some of the TVG personalities. Ken Rudolph has picked Confidence Game, and Mike Joyce has picked Confidence Game. So those 2 guys that and we all remember Ken Rudolph picking Giacomo and the 50-1 that he had all those years ago. But these guys have had a track record of success, and this is the horse they're backing.
Yeah, what scares me, or not scares me, but concerns me, not having a race since February 23rd.
layoff.
That layoff
really
really bothers me.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's obviously everyone's big question mark. The horse obviously has produced, but we were taking a look at the field, and you talked about live long shots. Was there anybody that you were maybe looking at, the post position draw comes out, and you say, okay, he's out? Anybody you threw out after the
I think the interesting thing about the draw, I think that if the Japanese contingent was expecting Continuar to go out there and set the pace for Derma Sotogake to kind of run into it. They didn't get what they wanted getting the number 20 post position, that's for sure. Because there's no way that Continuar is going to go out there and get the lead from the number 20
post. You can't do it. You can't.
Unless he goes 21 and, and burns himself out by the time they get to the half.
Exactly. I think it's going to be obviously it's a rider's race. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning about it, and I said, we were talking about post positions. I said, there's not a good post position in the Derby.
No,
it's 20 horses.
Yeah.
Right.
So there is no good post position. You hope that you can save some ground, you can get over, you get lucky. A horse moves out, you move inside. You go behind a horse
the
that's
Red
moving
Seas
to the lead.
part for a horse by the name of Rich Strike. Remember that?
Exactly.
When they showed that overhead shot
it's,
of Rich Strike, that was like, that's where you go, there's no way to describe that. There's no way that any trip handicapper mapped that trip out.
Nobody.
The Red Seas literally parted, and the horse showed up in race pace.
And same way Mind That Bird won. Because Mind That Bird took way back to last and just rolled the rail.
When you're on the far outside, you got no choice but just to go over to the rail and hope things open up for you. And that's what happened to Rich Strike.
I will say that was part of my concern with Tapatrice. There are some concerns with how he breaks from the gate.
Yeah.
He doesn't show a lot of early speed. He draws inside. I am worried that he's going to need a little bit of that Rich Strike luck. Hope the rail opens up for him. That was my concern. He was my top pick leading all the way up to the Derby, and then I just didn't love the post draw.
Well,
so
it's very possible he could get swallowed up there if he doesn't get out of the gate.
It does, yeah. And that's, we'll, like you said, get into our picks, but to Jacob's point, a great point there because, the horse is obviously a stalker, and he has never faced a field like this. He's going to have to employ some early speed.
What's everyone's thoughts on Two Phils? I know, I come out of the Jeff Ruby on the synthetic racetrack, but I watched that horse in the Jeff Ruby. He is one of my final 7 horses. He was striding out. I mean, the strides he was taking down the stretch in the Jeff Ruby were incredible. Now, I know it's the synthetic track, but what's everyone's thoughts on Two Phils?
Well, remember Animal Kingdom won off the synthetic track at Turfway and then came back to win the Derby after that. The 2 races at the fairgrounds, too. He was 3rd behind Angel of Empire and Sun Thunder in the Risen Star and was 2nd to Instant Coffee in the LeCompte. Now, Instant Coffee is not here, having gotten off the Derby trail fairly early in the game after not firing after that LeCompte Stakes. But, Two Phils, as I mentioned, I thought was going to be the horse that everyone kind of jumped on this week. The hot horse, the wise guy horse, as they like to call it. And it's to me, it's actually been a little quiet with him. There hasn't been a lot of talk about him.
There hasn't.
And he's just kind of floating under the radar here. And I understand how you have him in the top 7. I totally get it, given the performances. But to me, it just seems like it's a very quiet atmosphere around him.
Well, yeah, and all things considered, the Connections First Derby and things like that. But, the horse has a stakes win over Churchill, so you got to love that. And I saw the trainer Larry Ravelli, saying that kind of an interesting story with this horse. But, the horse really takes care of himself. So, as you talk about, and that's another factor, as you're talking about handicapping, which is one of the reasons why I love handicapping the Kentucky Derby, because, everyone can sit there and look at the past performances and choose your winner. But there are so many other factors, like it being the biggest race in the world and having to take on the crowd and the traffic and the all the horses and the pomp and circumstance that surround the Kentucky Derby, and having eat, sleep, breathe documented. But they say Two Phils is great with all of that. He's very unassuming that way. He doesn't get rattled, so that bodes well for him.
I'll throw another one out for everyone's consideration. Jacob, I'll throw it to you. What about Mage? What do you think about Mage?
I looked at Mage a lot because I did like that effort in the Florida Derby. He would have made a huge move on that last turn there just to get swallowed up by Forte right down by the wire. I did like that a lot. With that said, I just was a little uncertain with that Fountain of Youth. I went back and watched that, and I really didn't like that effort. I thought he looked pretty flat in there. I liked the Florida Derby, didn't love the Fountain of Youth. With that, I kind of opted that.
Another one with only 3 starts.
Right.
And where, as you were saying, you took all the horses from California and New York out, I actually eliminated the Florida horses. Because I didn't like any of those Florida races. Okay. And I know that takes me off of Forte, too, so that's a little bit of a sneak preview as we're going to put the picks up here in a moment. But, I just was not impressed with the Florida prep races this year. And I should say the Gulfstream prep races, because you have the Tampa races, too. But I just didn't find too much to like in those races.
Well, you got to take a stand somewhere.
Yeah,
you got to make a decision. You can't use all of them. You can't say, I like all 20 of them. You got to figure out who you're going to eliminate and why you're going to eliminate them.
I mean, you can, but it's just going to cost you a lot of money.
Much more than I have.
Yeah, well, I think Mattress Mac might be the only one that might
Yeah,
have that
exactly.
kind of money to try to figure it out. But I guess he'll be
I
on
was going
Forte.
to say, is that who is he on?
Whoever the favorite is, I'm sure it's going to be Forte when push comes to shove, because he'll put all that what is it, $2-3 million on that horse, and and really make the odds board flash a few times.
He probably, they were talking about it on FanDuel. Even with that much money he'll bet, he probably can only move that horse about a half a point.
Yeah,
There's
that's
so much
true.
so much money in the pools.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
How much money is wagered? I just can't get over it. I don't know. Those are, as far as long shots go, I mean, those are the ones that I saw that I thought might have some semblance of a chance. Like I said, I never do it, but I threw the California horses out and I threw the New York horses out. Think about that. New York and California. And
Yeah.
I'm throwing them out.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I will say one I've been seeing a lot of buzz about on Twitter that kind of surprised me a little bit that I wasn't necessarily in love with was Hit Show coming in from that Wood Memorial. I know,
Yeah.
Rick, you said you ended up throwing him out. Did have a win-2 back in the Withers there at Aqueduct. The people thought he did have an excuse in the Wood Memorial. It got a little bouncy there in the stretch with the big prize coming through there, but I didn't really love Hit Show, but I do see a lot of buzz on Twitter. A lot of people do like Hit Show as a possible price.
Which is interesting, given that he drew the rail.
Yeah.
Another Brad Cox horse. We were just talking about
Right.
Brad Cox.
Yeah.
My other thing, and he did have the 12 hole in the Wood Memorial.
That's true,
So,
yes.
so I'll give him that. The only thing I'll say about that stretch run, those horses look like prize fighters in the 15th round. They were staggering down the stretch, just staggering. And what was the horse? Was it 80 to 1 or something that won that race? I know he's a big prize. I might be wrong.
It's Lord Miles, who was actually the number 19 in here. He was 60 to 1.
Okay.
On that occasion, yeah, and and he gets up to beat Hit Show by a nose, and he draws number 19 here, which given his running style, he likes to be off the pace a little bit. May not affect him, but if you like Hit Show, you may have to throw Lord Miles in there too, because it's entirely possible that he gets the exact same trip, and if they're staggering at the end of the Derby. Yeah. You never know. I mean, he could come firing up late too. But that's before we put the picks up. One other little point I want to make, and we've talked about this also. You don't usually win the Derby from the clouds.
Nope.
Right.
You don't.
You have to be within the first 5 or 6 at the top of the stretch, and if you're any further back than that, I seriously doubt you're going to get there.
I watched the FanDuel's been showing, as you've all seen this week, been showing a lot of the old Derbies. I'm amazed at how many Derby winners came up the inside, not the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Came to, like Rich Strike last year,
Yeah.
like many they come inside in that last eighth of a mile. They're coming through the inside, saving ground. It's amazing how many came through the inside to get up.
Agreed.
So as we're going to take a look now at our selections for the Kentucky Derby coming up on Saturday, as we've got a couple of agreements here with the 5 Tapatrice, and as in fact, you should have the exact same exacta with
How about that?
Tapatrice.
We do.
And the 14 in their Angel of Empire, who I also have in my selections listed there too. But I'll let you guys go ahead and take the helm.
Ladies
here.
first.
Yeah, as I said earlier, as I was handicapping, obviously take a look at the past performances and study those pretty deeply. But then you go back and watch replays, and I just kept looking for a horse that impressed me in these lead-up races. And like you said, you throw out the various horses or what have you. Tapatrice was just a horse I just kept coming back to. I was so impressed with the way that he ran in the bluegrass. It was just one of those efforts that I thought, this horse vaulted himself to the top for me. And the thing about the Derby, in my opinion, is and as we've seen, there are so many horses that come in and are highly regarded coming into the Derby. But just as we see, it's all about peaking at the right time. And I think this is a horse that is trending in the right direction. He's peaking at the right time, obviously prepped by Todd Pletcher, beautifully prepped. And he's just got, everything going for him. We talked about, perhaps it being a wet surface on Saturday. He's got a win over a wet surface. And like I said, he's just a horse for me that you go back and you watch the Tampa Bay Derby, watch the Bluegrass. He's just a horse that, I think checks all the boxes for me.
I agree, and he wasn't my top choice until this morning. As of midnight last night, I was still Angel of Empire. But I just got to looking, and I got to thinking about, we've all seen all the races. The race I really liked, and I'll talk about the Bluegrass in just a second, the race at Tampa Bay. And if you've watched this horse, Luis Saez has had to ride this horse from the time he leaves the gate till he has to ride him. I don't know if the horse just needs encouragement or is a little bit lazy, but he has to ride him the entire way. at that race at Tampa, he was almost dead last. And when he made his move, he wound up getting floated 7 wide at Tampa Bay. Nobody wins at Tampa Bay getting floated 7
very
wide.
rare,
No,
yes.
And he winds up not only winning, but at the end, he's going away. Now, you could argue, what did he beat in that field? Okay, you got a point. But I like the way he did it. And then he comes back in the Bluegrass, as Emily was saying. I love that race. I think Saez had to ride him a little bit differently. I think Saez knew that he couldn't wait, that Verifying, a quality horse, if he's going to let Verifying's going to win it. And he had to move that horse, I think, before he probably normally would move him. But he did, he showed a little bit different running style, was still on the outside. He was 3 wide all the way the last half a mile and still beat a very tough horse in Verifying. So I'm like you, Emily. He checked all the boxes for me.
Yeah, he did. And, I think his running style, I think he's going to have a good pace to run into. I think he loves to stalk. I think he loves to track horses down. And this is crazy. This is, the girl coming out of me. I'm not crazy about picking a gray to win the Derby. But here we are. Tapatrice. I like it.
It's just, I saw a statistic this week that no horse either sired by or with the dam sire of Tapit has hit the board in the Derby yet. I think they're 0 for 18.
No kidding.
Which I thought was a
I
very
hadn't read
interesting
that.
stat, because given the fact that Tapit is like the sire of
Sires,
sires right
right.
now,
Yeah.
I just
Behind Into Mischief.
and he did win. I should say, by the way, he has produced several Belmont Stakes winners.
Yeah.
So that's
They
I'm
do
sure
run.
it's just
They
yes.
they can run distances.
It's just a statistical wacky
Anomaly,
thing there.
yeah.
That's just out there. But it is worth noting, given the fact that this may be one of the horses that a lot of folks are going to like.
Well, Emily and I like him.
Well, he liked him too, but he changed his mind, or otherwise I'd have been completely swamped here with Tapatrice. So,
Yeah,
Jacob, we'll let you talk your horse.
You just made me feel better. Of course, my top pick's out of a Tapit mare, that being King's Barn. This one, out of Uncle Mo, though. Uncle Mo has sired a Derby winner in Nyquist 2016, so maybe that cancels it out here a little bit. It did say the inexperience is the concern here for King's Barn, making just his 4th career start. With that said, he's been taking massive steps forward every single start he's made. The most unheralded of the Todd Pletcher barn, and that kind of says a lot about the kind of firepower he's bringing into this race. With that said, I loved his tactics in the Louisiana Derby. Went straight to the front, stole some pretty cheap fractions. They're not going to get cheap fractions like those in the Kentucky Derby. No. With that said, I do like that he can get forwardly placed. I think kind of the big 3 in here, Tapatrice, Angel of Empire, and Forte, all kind of lack a little bit of gate speed. So I think if he's going to get the head start on him, I think he'll be in position. If he can take that next step forward and prove he is that kind of Kentucky Derby winning horse, I think he'll be in the position to do it. And I think at the value he's going to offer, like I said, I think behind those big 3, you're kind of guessing and kind of reaching for maybe a price. I think King's Barn is going to be a really nice price, and if he does take that next step, I'm going to be there with him.
I don't think he needs to lead either. I mean, I think he can get himself well placed without using up, all of his speed. I think he can lay off it a little bit.
Yeah, and one thing to note there are some concerns there as beyond the inexperience. This is his 4th jockey and 4th starts. With that said, did pick up Jose Ortiz, who's been knocking on the door and getting that first Derby win, finished 2nd in 2018 with Good Magic. So he's been there. I do think that's a pretty good rider to pick up in the spots. I just thought he was at the price he's going to offer. I thought King's Barnes was well worth the shot.
I got him on my ticket. So now we're down to you, my friend.
That puts it on to me, and I am going completely off what the other folks here are saying, because I love Derma Sotogake. And I've said this from the instant he crossed the finish line in the UAE Derby, because I even came into your office that day and said, I think I got my Derby horse, because I was just so impressed with that performance. He won by 5.5 lengths, never looked like he was challenged. He was on the lead and went all the way basically in front. I don't think that's going to happen here, clearly with some of the speed in the race with Jace's Road and a couple of the others. But I think he can sit off the pace just fine and sit, especially from the outside post. If he can get himself positioned early on in the race, say 4th, 5th, or 6th, I could see him very much winning this race in a Barbaro-like fashion, where he could, just kind of stalk, and when the time comes, Christophe Lemaire pushes the button, and bam, this horse is gone. And I just think, and when they made him 10-1 in the morning line, I said, I'll take that all day, because I have been impressed with this horse, and even the way he's been handling himself on property at Churchill Downs.
Yeah.
He has been nothing but professional. I know he's been throwing his head in the morning, and it's they've been saying a couple of things here and there. I think they're just looking for faults at this point, because I honestly think this horse is, we saw the Japanese method work in the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar a couple of years ago with Marshall Rain and a couple other horses out there, and I think that this horse, in this particular spot is poised for a huge effort.
So those are our Derby picks. But look, guys, we got exactas, trifectas, and superfectas we got to worry about.
That's right.
Come Saturday.
And I'm with you. I like Derma Sotogake. I think, like you said, I don't think there's a horse coming in this race that was as impressive as he was in the UAE Derby. Again, my biggest concern there is just, the travel, like everybody talks about, coming over
Right.
from the UAE Derby, what that does to the horse. And like you said, his works have been good. He's taken, to Churchill, looks like he's been a professional, but, you're not going to know until the gate unfolds that, what that.
And even the horse, even the work that was yesterday or the other day, 4 furlongs, 49 and 3, and that wasn't anything. But that is in keeping with the way that the Japanese prepare their horses. They have
right.
one kind of loping workout right before the race, and then So I really like the way that they're sticking to their game plan.
No, they do all their. They were talking yesterday. They do all their training in Japan. Anything over here is just to keep the
prep
horse
work,
fit.
yeah.
It's just
Right.
The only thing I'll say, and I didn't use the horse. Okay, so you can see I didn't. The race in UAE Derby. If you could, what impressed you is what concerns me. He never got pushed at any part of that
Right,
race.
right.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point.
In this race, no one's going to get out there and get just
right.
easy lead with no one on their, without getting pushed. So that's on my other concern on him.
And we talked about the underneath horses too, and I know that Jacob and I both like the 2-horse Verifying, because when I was going through the race and handicapping the race, and this always happens when I'm looking at the Derby, one horse just jumps off the page and is like, wow, where did this horse come from? And this is the horse for me that I'm like, I would never have expected myself to pick this horse in this position. But I just look at the way, okay, I understand everyone has Tapatrice, you and Emily, I should say, have Tapatrice on top. I did not use Tapatrice, and the big reason for that for me is Verifying, as Emily mentioned, dug in the bluegrass and just got beat on that occasion. You're going to get a better price on Verifying than you are on Tapatrice. So that's why I elected to go with Verifying as opposed to Tapatrice underneath.
It would not surprise me if he's in the top 4 at all. Like I said, you can throw that race at Oakland, 2 races, completely throw that one out. That was just one of those races where everyone went for the lead, including him, and they click off a 46.5 on a sloppy track.
Yeah.
It's just you throw that out. I think he's going to get a really good trip from the 2-hole. Now he does have enough speed to get a nice spot. So I had, like I said, I had him in my top 7. He didn't make my top 4, but I like him.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed the Rebel 2 back. I, like you, I drew a line through that one. I went back and watched the replay, got bottled up coming around the last turn, and just kind of lost interest a little bit. Tyler Gaffalione hopped aboard in the bluegrass last time out, who's going to be driving, the jockey here in the Derby. Kept him kind of in the clear, and he was second best to Tapatrice in that race. With that said, but like you said, dug in, and those two are much the best in that bluegrass stakes. It was a long ways back to third. I like you. I just like the price they're going to get on Verifying. I like him almost just as much as I like Tapatrice. I thought he was worth a shot underneath at that
and
price.
he's by that sire. What's it? That Justified?
Yeah.
What-
Yeah,
I think he had a
too
little
bad.
success.
Well, he's all right, wasn't he? He was okay, wasn't he?
He's one of those that he's the one that disproved that you have to race a 2-year-old
That's right.
jinx. Like I'm hoping Derma Sotogake eliminates the 0 for lifetime from the 17 post.
Right.
In the Derby.
And the no UAE Derby winner, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Right.
No, yes. That also would be going down. And I know the travel is the big issue with that horse, but I think that they've gotten the horse acclimated to Churchill Downs,
Right.
as I mentioned, and I just think that's not going to be as huge a factor as quite a few folks think.
So, Emily, you and Michael both used confidence game. I expressed my concern because he hadn't been out for a while. Do you want to talk about confidence game?
Yeah, this is a horse, another one that I just, kind of kept coming back to. He obviously is a horse that, coming out of that Rebel Stakes, I thought, he held strong and, was very impressive. Like I said, he's got a win over a wet surface, which was interesting to me. And obviously, the break is concerning, not having a prep race, but there's something to be said too, about coming into this, wanting to, run your best race. So if nothing else, the horse is going to be fresh.
He's gonna be fresh,
You know,
yeah.
and I like the post position. I like the way that this race kind of sets up for him a little bit here. I think he's going to have, you know, quite a few horses. He's not a need the lead type of horse, but I think will be forwardly placed. And I think, you know, as you talked about, a lot of horses being up close. I think he's one of those horses that's going to be up close and going to be right there.
And let's not ignore the fact he's won twice over the track.
Yeah.
Right.
And he put up a bullet
Look
work
at that
on
work.
the 29th,
I
5 furlongs
watched
and
that.
59.
I watched that work the other day.
Yeah.
That was an
Yeah,
amazing
that was,
work.
yes, it was.
Amazing work.
It was.
Clearly he likes the racetrack.
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
And especially, as I say, if it's going to rain, which we are now expecting it to, not only Saturday, but Friday and Saturday. So it should be a really off track for Derby Day, unfortunately, as we all would like to see some nice sunshine and fast and firm, but we may not get that this year. If that's the case, I think that confidence game, I don't want to say it almost took me off Derma Sotogake, but I was very much thinking I could have even moved the horse up further.
Jacob,
Yeah,
who you got underneath?
So then I went pretty chalky after my first two, after Kings Barnes and Verifying. Then I went with the two other Todd Pletcher trainees, the Todd Pletcher chalk kind of. Tapatrice, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. My concerns there is the traffic trouble he might endure from the inside. I do love him for the Belmont Stakes. I've already got him circled as my Belmont winner. With that said, I was just a little concerned about the traffic. I think he's going to be moving forward in the stretch. I'm just worried he's going to have too much work to do. And then I also threw on the big gun, of course, that being Forte to round out my ticket. Don't want to put him on top just because I don't think he's going to offer the best value on top. With that said, if he drifts up to that price we maybe talked about, 9-2, 5-1, I'd absolutely jump on that. Just for pure value, I have to put him fourth. I'll use him in box with my exotic tickets, stuff like that. But I don't want to pick him on top at the price he's going to offer.
You know, we haven't talked much about him. We haven't given him much love, but three of us have got Angel of Empire as part of our trifectas and superfectas. I thought this horse was incredibly impressive in the Arkansas Derby, and if he runs back to that race, he'll be tough.
Yes. I agree. Angel Empire has done nothing wrong. He won the Risen Star as a 13-1 upsetter down at the fairgrounds. Went to Arkansas, won that race very impressively, 4 1/4 lengths. Flavian Pratt rode the Arkansas Derby and is going to ride again here for trainer Brad Cox. I think Angel of Empire, as we said, I could see this horse, okay, maybe not being the favorite, but I certainly think that he could be going off the second choice.
I agree.
And, you know, we talk about this is another one, though, that I think is going to be interesting because he's going to have plenty of pace to run at. He loves to come from off the pace. He's a stalking type. You know, so, again, and when we kind of talked about it, I really do like Angel of Empire. This was a horse that, you know, that I had liked for quite a while. You know, watching that Arkansas Derby, he was one of those that, like you said, was very impressive. He's got a really quick turn of foot, you know, whereas sometimes like Forte and some of these other ones, like you said, Tapatrice, they have to ride this horse. Angel of Empire is one of those that, you know, is just a quick horse, go right now kind of horse.
And Classic Empire the Sire is one of the many horses over the years that I have jinxed by selecting as the winner of the Derby, which ended as soon as he got hammered right out of the gate in 2017.
Yeah, that
but
was bad.
he still ran fourth, which
He
was
did.
a very
That
great
was
effort
a
given that
gallant
start.
effort from
And I
him.
agree with you, Emily. His move in the Arkansas Derby, it was instant.
It was.
I mean, like you said, you snapped your finger. It was right now. Tapatrice is a grinder.
Yeah.
You're not going to see a big, quick move. He's going to keep coming and coming and coming and hope he gets there. I thought that Angel of Empire, that move in the Arkansas Derby was incredible.
It really was. Yeah, it was. You know, and we talked about this. So we talked about Jace's Road being the pace setter. Anybody have any? Who is going to be the rabbit, if you will?
Great question.
I do think Continuar is going to get forwardly positioned as best he can from the 20 hole. I mean, obviously, I don't think he's going to be up with Jace's Road going for the lead. I think the question is going to be not so much who else is going to be the pace setter, but how fast the pace is going to be.
Right.
I mean, are they going to go out there like Palace Malice did and, you know, basically burn a half mile and 45 and whatever it was and basically set things up for a deep closer to win that race? Or are they going to have a little more conservative approach to it here? I could see, especially on the off track, you may not get a blazing pace.
Right.
But if Jace's Road gets things his own way early on, I could see him easily going 45 and change.
You know, a horse we haven't even said his name is a horse that won the Santa Anita Derby.
I was just going to
Practical
bring this up.
move.
Yes.
It's hard
Yes.
to believe.
It's
You
funny
win the
because
Saturday-
I
we
was
haven't
just
mentioned
looking
him.
at him. We
And-
haven't
and-
even
and
mentioned
mentioned
his
his name.
name.
And I had him fourth up until the forecast came in for the weather, because I thought Practical Move's race in Santa Anita was very, very nice. He held off a horse that I know a lot of people are hoping draw in from the
Mandarin
AE listed
Hero.
Mandarin Hero.
Yeah.
But which was a great effort from that member of the Japanese contingent as well. But Practical Move, has done nothing wrong. 7 starts, 4 wins, a second, 2 thirds, and he's 3 for 3 in the last 3 races, all graded
And he's-
stakes.
Right.
It's I think it gets to the point where, as we've been saying, you have to take a stand.
Yeah.
And as I said, I'll put it this way: if I'm going 5 deep, that's the 5th horse.
Okay.
I bet on him in the San Felipe. Let me say this: the horse has done nothing wrong. He has gotten the 2 most beautiful trips a horse has ever gotten
Yeah.
in stakes races, and I just can't see that 3rd beautiful trip happening
Coming
in
in
the
the
Kentucky
Derby.
Derby.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's what got me off of him.
Well, and the thing too is he's got back-to-back buyers of 100, which I think Forte is 2 buyers coming in were 198 before the last one was a 95, so a little lesser.
Yeah.
But that's something that usually a lot of people point to was the buyer speed figures, and this horse has got the numbers.
This is a great Derby, isn't it?
Yes,
I
it is.
love
Yeah.
this Derby.
Well, then I know we mentioned Practical Moves, so I know we talked about him a little bit earlier in the card. That being Skinner, who finished 3rd, just missed behind Practical Move. Finished 3rd as well in the San Felipe behind Practical Move there. Again, he doesn't maybe show the gate speed. He was coming from a little too far back in both of those races, had a little too much traffic to come through. But maybe in a race like this, if we do get a hot pace, Skinner could be a possible upset candidate.
And he's by Curlin, who was 3rd in the Derby and then won the Preakness following on, and then went on to win the Breeders' Cup Classic. And as with Tappet, is one of the better sires in the game
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So there's certainly things to like about Skinner for sure, and about these California horses. Not to discount them entirely, but as you said, at some point you just have to say, I can't bet everybody.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that if you're gonna kind of say which ones are the ones I have to weed out. You just have to basically watch the preps and see
Yeah.
what impresses you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What catches your eye? What kind of move did you think this horse made? How did they close in the race? How did the pace set up? I go back to the Wood and watch these New York horses run off the board, but I just watched those horses stagger down the stretch in the Wood Memorial. I mean, there was no one. I mean, they were just bumping off each other. They were so tired.
Okay, one last question before we conclude today. We're looking at the numbers on the board here. Okay, if there is one horse that is not on the board that could possibly pull a rich strike, wacko kind of crazy upset that we have not mentioned yet, who do you think it is?
Oh boy.
I'll give you mine.
Go ahead.
as you're
Go
looking.
ahead.
Number 11, Disarm. You've got Joel Rosario and Steve Asmussen. Gun runner, and again, but by a Tappet mare, which might kill my 0 for 18 statistic I pulled throughout earlier. But this horse was third in the Lexington just a few weeks ago to get into this race. And, First Mission ran a big race and got Arabian Lion there. And this horse was the horse that kind of followed everybody in. If Asmussen has never won the Derby, he should have won it last year, didn't.
Oh, I
it
know.
would be so kind of karma kismet.
It would. That's a really good point.
If
That's
he
a
comes
great
back
point.
and wins, and it wins with a gun runner horse on top of it.
Yeah, that would be vindication for sure
Yeah.
for Steve Asmussen. I would give you that.
The
The only
go
concern
ahead,
is
Emma.
that he's such a because he's a horse that I took a serious look at, but he was on the shelf there for quite a while, and I don't know, it just nothing really jumps off the page at him besides the fact that he's trained by Steve Asmussen.
If you're going to say what one horse could possibly do it, now I'm going to take back what I just said. Hit Show from New York, he had raced at Churchill Downs last fall. This horse has got 5 races. He's been the favorite each and every time. Came out of the 12 hole, just does get beat a nose, and now he's 30-1 in the Derby, and he's got the rail, and he does have a little bit of tactical speed. I'm not using him. I'm just saying if you want one of those rich strike horses, maybe Hit Show would be it.
And I will throw out the one stat we all know about, that no one has won from the rail in the Kentucky Derby since Ferdinand in 1986, which is so far ago that Bill Shoemaker rode.
I was going to say, Bill Shoemaker rode him. Yep.
Go Ferdinand.
Just to throw one way off the board, just because he stood out to me when I went back and watched the Rebel. Number 7 at 51 on the board. That's Reincarnate. Finished third in that Rebel Stakes. That was a sloppy going. If we do get some rain on Churchill on Saturday, I really went back and really watched that Rebel Stakes, and he really impressed me. Got shuffled way back, was coming in the stretch, had to check up midway through the stretch, still got up for third. I thought Reincarnate, he was a horse that people thought pretty highly of early on, late last year, coming into his 3-year-old campaign. It wouldn't shock me if, he could maybe get a piece up there at 50-1.
All right, Emily, that just leaves you to give us one that
I don't,
we haven't talked
I
about
love
yet.
it. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go completely just, because there are a couple horses. Hit Show was one that I would say, that I may use just in some, crazy numbers. Lord Miles is another
yeah.
horse that I would probably throw in there. But let's just go with a crazy Sun Thunder into Mischief here. This horse, coming into it, we got Brian Hernandez. Kenny McPeak, so I mean, he's got the connections.
They're putting
adding the
blinkers on for
blinkers.
the Derby too.
So he's just a horse that I think 50-1, you're definitely going to get a price on him.
The top stallion in the world.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I mean, intermission, they all run. They run on anything. Concrete,
Yeah.
turf, dirt, synthetic, it doesn't make any difference.
That's right.
Yes, indeed. So we've analyzed pretty much all 20 of them. I don't think we missed any of them as we've gone through our Kentucky Derby preview here. We are very excited to have a lot going on here at Harrah's Hoosier Park come Saturday. We'll have our hat contest, and of course we have pushed back our live post time to 7:20 because the Derby is supposed to go off at 6:57. We'll see how close they get to that.
Yeah.
I'm sure NBC would like it just maybe a little after 7 o'clock so they get a little more of a primetime audience there. So we'll see how that works out. But any final thoughts before we close it out?
To me, this is like the Derby. I'm more interested in this Derby than I have been in years. Like I said, I was Epicenter all the way. You couldn't have talked me off Epicenter last. You and I were both on Epicenter, Emily.
Yep.
I thought he had the race won. I thought he was the standout horse last year.
Agreed.
And he got beat by Rich Strike. I don't feel that this year, all bets off.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said at the top of the show, I'm equally as excited about this Derby because I think it's as wide open as we've seen. I think, there's no horse that, is crazy out there. I think you can make a case for any number of one of these horses, and I think that makes for some really interesting handicapping and, of course, makes the Derby why it is the Derby.
Yep.
Yeah, just looking forward to the race in general. It's been kind of all over the place. Maybe it's going to be Forte as a favorite or maybe a big price. It's been that way all the way. But as you said, this is the place to be if you can't be at Churchill Downs. We had an incredible atmosphere last year. It really stood out to me watching Rich Strike come off the rail last week. This crowd erupted here at Hoosier Park. You would have thought you were at Churchill. This is the place to be. It's a great place to watch the Derby. And as I said, we're going to have a lot going on.
Yes, and we once again will have our hat contest starting at 4 o'clock. We encourage everyone to get here and pre-register prior to that or on our Facebook page, and we're definitely looking forward to doing that.
Yep.
And I think we've pretty much covered the whole show.
This has been fun.
Yes,
this has been a lot
I
of
feel
fun.
like we could have done 2 hours.
I
said
know.
30 minutes.
We could have actually made this a little longer, but I think we would have lost some viewers by the time we got to hour
probably.
number 2.
This has been a lot of fun, though. I mean, just bouncing things off each other and getting each other's ideas, and that's why it's horse racing because everyone's got their own opinion.
That's right, and especially in the Derby, everyone's got an opinion.
Yeah, and we talk about the Derby and things like that, and I want to commend obviously the Kentucky Derby, just the phenomenal job that they do from a social media standpoint, from just a coverage standpoint, the press releases, everything that goes into the Derby. That's what makes it so special. That's what makes it so fun, and I just want to encourage everyone to enjoy it.
Yeah, and we'll have the NBC telecast throughout the afternoon here at Harrah's Hoosier Park, so you're not going to miss anything. By being here.
Yes, that's right. You can watch and wager on the entire Churchill card both Friday and Saturday here at Harrah's Hoosier Park. We do want to make sure that you know that, so when you come out a little bit early and get your spot for Derby Day, that you'll be able to bet all the races, not only from Churchill Downs but across the country as well. So for Jacob Reinheimer, Emily Gaskin, Rick Moore, I'm Michael Chamberlain, wishing the best of luck to you all.